Welcome, hello and hi my creative friends. Today we're checking out a classic British pencil. From the big daddy of British pencil royalty comes a classic range of pencils that's big selling point is softness. With a velvety tip that allows you to quickly add lots of bold, vibrant colours, and apparently it's also pretty great for colouring. Today I give to you the ever so soft Coloursoft from Derwent. Derwent! I love Derwent, but I don't actually use them as often as I should, which is a shame because Derwent has some really cool pencil ranges, and I love any company that develops and creates unique stuff for very specific purposes, which Derwent certainly does. Which is great because I am, like I'm sure a lot of you are, getting a little bit fatigued by all the modern pencils that we've looked at lately that feel very, very similar. So of course, I am very excited to have a play with today's Coloursoft. Let's work out what makes them so unique together. Derwent, formerly known as Derwent Cumberland Pencil Company, is of course the oldest pencil manufacturer in Britain. They started producing pencils way back in 1832 in the delightful Lake District, where they still are to this day. They have some very cool pencil ranges available, with a lot that we've actually checked out before, and they'll be floating around here somewhere, and you should go and have a look at them. But the Coloursoft, other than briefly playing with them with my always lovely, very talented friend Galactic Cat, you should go check out her channel here, I've really never had a chance to explore them in any great depth, but that is going to change today. From what I understand, and let's not beat around the bush here, the Coloursoft is Derwent's answer to that other great, much-loved soft pencil, the Prismacolor. Ooh. So let's see how they compare and how they handle our rigorous testing regime to answer that burning question, are they actually any good? This is the Derwent Coloursoft tin of 72 pencils. In case you're wondering, it's actually the box, but inside this box is a tin. If we jump on over to the Derwent website and find these pencils, then drill it down to the Coloursoft, we have a lot of options available. There is a 72, 36, 24, 12, and a smaller tiny tin of 6 available. The Coloursoft also has a super fancy 72 pencil wooden box version, and it looks like they're also available open stock, which is great. Derwent's site has a bit of information, not a huge amount mind you, about these pencils. There is a swatch and the standard reviews from buyers, nothing super specific about them though. The 72, which we have here, is the total colour range available, so a mid-sized colour palette. Back to our tin of 72. Immediately, what jumps out is what I initially thought was Chewie from Star Wars. Yeah! Sorry about that. No, it's actually not. It's a colourful grumpy bear. It does look a little bit digital though for my tastes. Under this, we have the Derwent and the Coloursoft logos on the Derwent blue tin. There is a bit of information here, including that it's 72 pencils, soft colour pencils, professional quality, and Derwent standard small digital swatch. As always, there's also this cute little British flag in the corner. This tin, unfortunately, hasn't arrived unscathed. It's got a bit of a dent here in the corner. Hopefully, the pencils are okay. If we flip it over, we have the standard Derwent backplate, some branding at the top, and information in 7, 8, 9 languages. I'll sum it up for us. It basically says these are decent colourful pencils. Let's see, shall we? If we flip it back and open it up, you can see our pencils. Very elegant and maroon, it looks like. They are, as Derwent does, vacuum sealed to the rear of the tin to hold them together in shipping. If we check out this lid, it's the same info as the rear, plus a little bit of Derwent's history. Okay, so let me just remove that plastic. The vacuum seal is a great idea as it means they don't rattle about too much in transport. The 72 kit is comprised of 2 trays of 36 pencils. These trays look strong, and I think you could keep your pencils in this easily. Let's check out those pencils in more detail. This is the Derwent Coloursoft pencil. Like a lot of Derwent's range, it feels slightly thicker than your average pencil. It's like a really rich dark maroon colour, which feels like a satin paint. It has a real presence in your hand. The length of the pencil is 180mm long and the diameter of the barrel is 8.1mm wide. The barrel of the Coloursoft is made of cedar wood and the tip, like a lot of Derwent's pencils, comes a bit rough from the factory with a robust 4mm wax core. If we go from tip to tail, it's a one-sided pencil with a silver England followed by Derwent Coloursoft. Near the end, we have the colour name and pencil code, followed by the famous silver ring and a coloured end cap. That end cap is a rounded paint-dipped end and, interestingly, a different texture with glossy paint on it. One thing I will say about Derwent is they're very consistent with their design. There is a couple of slight differences in some of the lines that they offer. The Lightfast Raw Glossy Wood is an example of that, but without fail, they're all pretty much very similar to these Coloursoft. You either love Derwent's look and design or you don't. I do appreciate Derwent vacuum sealed their pencils to the rear of this tin. It keeps our pencils safe. It's a great idea, but as you saw, this tin is still dented because it just shows up in a light cardboard box. No real padding on them. The look of the Derwents are okay. I think I've said it all before, but the silver should be silverier and the colour swatch on the pencil end should be a fraction larger. That said, I quite like the maroon they have chosen here, but it does make these feel very utilitarian. If these are actually Derwent's challenge to the Prismacolor, as we've heard, I'm really surprised they didn't go for something a little bit more colourful and poppier to make them stand out. One thing I did notice when playing with these is the maroon of the barrel is satin. But strangely, the swatch at the end of the pencil is a gloss paint. It's just a fun little textural change to make these pencils just a wee bit nicer. Okay, so design aside, let's look at how they perform. Excellent reputation and British consistency aside, are they actually any good? First up, let's test the saturation and vibrancy. Our first test is our saturation and vibrancy. Here, I'm looking at how bright and how poppy these pencils are and how consistent they are in that. But first, let's swatch these bad boys and see what the range is like. I always try very hard to make sure I have a pencil's full colour range available when we test them. It just makes the swatching a whole lot more fun and it really gives us all a very good idea of what the pencil can actually offer. Unfortunately, for the most part, I'm buying all of these pencils, so that's sometimes not financially possible. But today, we're in luck and I've splurged just a wee bit with our 72 pencil kit here. We have all the colours available that Coloursoft offers. 72 isn't a huge range, particularly compared to a lot of the newer pencil offerings, but it's still quite a respectable number. I've started moving quite quickly through the colours, and first impression is, with these pencils, is that, as the name suggests, they are quite soft. I'm not sure if they feel as soft as the Prismacolor, but they are very velvety in that they feel like they're gliding across the page. Realistically, they are only a teensy bit wider than an average pencil, but for some reason, they always feel fat in my hand. Color-wise, so far, it's not bad. It feels like a lot of our colors are grouped into blocks that are quite similar to each other though. They are all different colors, but it's like 3 dark blues, then 3 light blues, with nothing really in between. That's likely to make blending a little bit easier, and it may mean that with these color spaces, that Derwent may expand this range at some future point. That said, for a 72 kit, the colors here are quite broad, and it does cover a lot of the spectrum. We're ending with some cool and warm browns and quite a nice selection of greys. Before we deep dive into this color, let's check out the second part of this test and see exactly how vibrant these pencils are. For this test, what I'm doing is picking 4 colors from this kit, plus our dominant black and white, and we're going to measure the pigment put down across various weights. The way we're going to be doing this is by putting down pigment from the pencils at 5 different pressures. 25 grams, 50 grams, 100 grams, 200 grams, and 400 grams, so light to heavy. As that pressure builds up, hopefully the pencil should become more and more saturated, which will show us just how consistent and predictable this saturation is. For any paper people out there, I'm just using basic 140 GSM white multimedia paper for these tests. Let's go get started. The pencils I've chosen today are red C120, green, pea green C430, blue C330, yellow, deep cardamom C040, black C650, and white C720. Starting off with our red, as we always do at the 25 grams. That red is quite poppy for the 25 gram mark, but looking at it in comparison to the green, blue, yellow, and now black, it also feels very solidly and pleasantly consistent. That 50 grams starts off very nicely with that red, green, blue, and now yellow, doubling the 25 gram weight. That black maybe a tiny bit more than a doubling. Onto our 100 grams. There's quite a big jump from the 50 grams with our red, but the green and now blue feel to be a nice doubling. The yellow is like the red, it's a little bit more than a doubling, and so too now is our black. Our 200 grams is next, and we've really jumped up quite a bit in saturation here, and we're starting to get a bit of burnishing, but our colors across the board are really consistent at 200 grams. Onto our 400 grams, our highest weight for today. We are starting to see some strong burnishing in all of our colors here, and while it looks like I've knocked the scale, like the 200 grams, all our colors are very vibrant and really quite consistent. Let's do the same thing with our white pencil on our black cardboard. 25 grams is very similar to our colors. The 50 grams is a nice doubling. I'm not sure if the 100 grams is doubled from the 50 grams, and that 200 grams definitely isn't doubling from our 100 grams. The 400 grams is very dense and quite strong. These pencils do feel quite soft, and I'm finding that they're actually surprisingly consistent across the board. On our scale, there was a few, maybe it's a doubling, maybe it's not quite moments in this test, but overall, they've done pretty well. We were getting a little bit of burnishing at the 200 gram mark and a ton at the 400 gram mark, but pleasantly, it was actually pretty easy to get to and hold these pencils at that higher weight. It felt like the core was able to do most of the work for me rather than me having to force it, which is excellent. I'm also finding that even though they are on the thicker side, the Coloursoft are very comfortable to use across all our weights, and worth noting, very economical in their laydown. I haven't had to sharpen them at all yet, and there's still quite a usable tip there. The colour range isn't bad. It feels like Derwent are grouping colours a bit like a shade above and a shade below each colour, and I can see how this would be really useful for our blending, but it does leave slightly larger holes in our swatching. Personally, they just honestly don't feel as vibrant as I would have expected. If I'm comparing them to the Prismacolor, they do lack a bit of that pop which that pencil has. I also didn't feel like there was enough variation in our skin tones and browns either. Some lighter, warmer colors would be great there. Okay, so let's give the Coloursoft a mark here. On a scale of A to F, with S being superb, I'm giving the Coloursoft quite a nice B. And that sticks them right here. Next up is our single pencil gradient, and this test should be very interesting with a pencil that's as soft as the Coloursoft is. Gradients are a really important test for any pencil, and that's because it tells us a lot about the characteristics of that pencil and, importantly, how much control we have over it. What we're looking for here is a nice seamless gradient while taking into account how easy it is to go from a very heavy pressure to a very light pressure and how the pencil feels while doing so. Starting off really strongly with our red pencil here, I'm finding I don't even need to hit the 400 gram mark to cause this pencil to burnish. It's not until we get below the 200 grams that we are actually starting to gradient down. And even when we do get to that light end, it's still pretty vibrant. The green is a very similar start to our red pencil, but I'm finding it does start gradienting a little earlier than it, and we're getting a much lighter end than our red here. The blue is going down well, and very much a clone of our green pencil here, very similar. The yellow is next, and I'm struggling a bit here to not go super heavy pressure. It's going down quite well, not quite as strong as that red, but it ends very close to our green and blue. The black is coming down and it's gradienting really nicely. It feels a little harder than our other pencils as it's got a nice heavy, mid and light end. Let's check out our white on our black cardboard. That's coming in very strong and much like our black pencil is gradienting down really well to a very nice light end. I think the Coloursoft have gradiented really well here actually. The previous test showed us that the Coloursoft are quite consistent pencils overall, which is really helping how they gradient. It's also helping me a lot in keeping control of the pencils. It's just an easy pencil to work with. It is a little bit pencil specific where they moved from that burnishing point into gradienting, of course. If you were watching the numbers as I came down, you would have seen that the red particularly held that burnishing point till about the 200 grams, which is really low for any pencils. But I'm guessing that's just a quirk of a pencil that is living up to its name as soft. Even though they were all burnishing at a lower weight, the gradient they did do from that point was excellent. And more importantly, it felt really easy and really seamless to do them. The only real negative with the gradient from such a soft pencil is that even at our lightest end, there's still a lot of pigment coming down, which may not suit the art that you're doing with them. For a really decent gradient, but one that still puts down quite a lot of pigment at our lightest end, I'm giving the Coloursoft an A in the straight gradient. These pencils are turning out to be very consistent overall. It's time for the test where we, as the title 3 seconds ago said, blend some pencils. Blending is always a really important thing with any pencil, and I'm gonna say it every time until it's on a t-shirt. A good blend takes our art from the ordinary to the extraordinary. For something as soft as these pencils, it should, in theory, be something they excel at, but we can always be surprised. Let's start off with looking at mixing some dissimilar colors. Coming down with our red gradient, I am finding I need a bit of a light hand with these as I do this, as it's very easy to put down too much pigment here. And up with our green. As soon as we hit that red, almost at the bottom actually, we're starting getting pigment mixing on the page. Let's go down with our blue and come up with our yellow. It's even easier to see here as we are getting a green mix almost straight away from the bottom all the way through to a really strong green mix. This is very easy to work with. Let's check out our transitional blend, where I'm doing my best to transition between two colors, starting with our red and yellow. Really interesting. It's easy to blend here and we're seeing a nice orange coming through, but that blend isn't quite as smooth as I'd have thought based on our previous test. It's almost like there is so much pigment coming down, it's taking over from the bottom layer. The same thing is happening on our green and blue. A good blend, but not quite as amazing as I was expecting. Let's try our more advanced spherical blending test. It's again not bad. I'm finding that the green isn't as consistent over our yellow as I'd like, but still a relatively nice blend. It almost feels like had I flipped this one and gone darker color first, I may have blended a bit easier. Interesting. Let's roll straight into our layering test. This pencil is still really comfortable to work with, and our first layer has gone down very, very strong. Looking at it here, I may have been able to do this first bit a bit lighter, but once we've started, we're sticking with it. Layer 2 is going down just as easy, and that color is building up very nicely. I'm still impressed by how consistent these pencils are here. Layer 3 is coming down now, and we are starting to get a bit of a slowdown in how dense and saturated these layers are. It's still really great coverage, but maybe not as big a jump as I would have expected. Layer 4, which is what we're doing at the moment, is very similar. I am trying to keep a similar pressure on here, by the way. It just feels to be a characteristic of these pencils. Layer 5 has jumped quite a bit from layer 4 actually, and I'd say we're right at that cusp of burnishing. Bang! Layer 6 is super dense as every color here starts burnishing. That's some very nice, very dense blocks of color. The blending here has been a bit strange. Not bad, just unexpectedly odd. When these colors have mixed, they have mixed super well and made very clear, very defined colors, which is great to see. But when we start transitioning between them, they didn't do as well as I'd hoped. It feels like these pencils are so strong that they're taking over from each other as I add each layer. The same thing has happened here with our sphere. This doesn't mean that they're bad, but it does mean they're likely, and let me just say, they do respond far better when you apply other blending techniques to them. A smudge stick or blender really helped them shine. Our layers were great. They layered up nicely and relatively consistently, and then when they did burnish, they burnished with a real bang. And you know what? Overall, still super economical in how much pencil I've used, and they just feel really comfortable. For a blend which may require an additional technique or two to get the best out of, I'm giving the Coloursoft a B in our blending test. Sticking them right in here. It's time for that test where we look at exactly what our white pencil can do. The white has been a pretty decent pencil today, and like the rest of them, very consistent. I'm really curious to see what happens when we start incorporating it, particularly in how it will affect our blending. For this test, we're going to use those blending tests that we prepared earlier and bring in our white pencil and lay it over the top of the primary colors. How will the white pencil change and lighten the already drawn colors? Will it burnish? Will it blend? Will it do anything at all? Starting with our dissimilar colors, and as you can see straight away, that white is coming down very strong. It's also really interestingly smoothing that blend a lot here as well. You can see that particularly well on the blue and yellow. It is super strong though, lightening our colors a lot. Our transitional blends are a really similar story. It's really helping with the blend, but as it's so strong, it's really washing out our colors. It's not really pleasant on the red and yellow, but the darker colors of the green and blue, it's quite a nice addition. The advanced spherical blend here has really jumped in quality with the addition of our white pencil. Because there's so much yellow in it, it's just making it much more poppy and pastel, which sort of works. Well, with a name like Coloursoft, this is, I guess, to be expected, a really strong white. And the results of this test really all come down to what we want our white for. As a white that lightens our pigment, it's a great white. Very strong, very pronounced, and quite nice and smooth. But if it's a white that we want to use to help our blends, while it has really smoothed our edges and helped the blend quite a lot, it's unfortunately a bit too strong for that. It just takes over. So let's just say this is a great white for certain uses. Let's give the Coloursoft a B in the white factor. A very strong white that slots in right here. With our color accuracy test, we are checking if the pigment that the pencil puts down matches the color on the pencil's barrel. How I'm doing this is simple. I'm bringing in the pencil barrel and I'm putting it next to the gradient that we created earlier. Starting with our red, and as always with our Derwent, it's a bit hard to judge as that color swatch is just so small. But I think that red is much darker and more vibrant than the pigment put down. It's exactly the same with our green here. I think the blue is slightly better matching, but again, really not super close. Our yellow is very dark on the barrel compared to that pigment, and our black, much darker than the pigment put down. Well, it's always a challenge with Derwents to compare our colors for accuracy, as the swatches are so tiny. But from what I could see, I think across the board, these pencils are quite a bit out. The blue's pretty good, I mean, it's okay. But all the rest of them are much more saturated in the swatch than the color pigment they've put down, which is a shame. So I'm giving the Coloursoft a C+ for color accuracy. Putting them right in here. It's time for my favorite test, the break factor. Breaking pencils is more than just faffing about, which admittedly I do a lot of, but this test is about us testing our pencil strength and then helping us work out if the pencil's core is soft or hard. It also gives us a really good idea about the pencil's manufacturing consistency. Consistency! I've said it a lot about working with the Coloursoft, so I have high hopes they keep that up here. Let's go find out. To make this test as consistent as possible across all the pencils we're going to review, I've set up a couple of controls. I'm going to sharpen each pencil to a point. I'm then going to dull them slightly by drawing 3 lines at pressure. Basically, this will make sure we don't have a super fine point that will break immediately. I'm then going to be using a 45-degree square to get a consistent angle of pressure. Makes sense? Let's go break some leads. Starting with our red as usual and just setting it up by taking off our tip. 1, 2, 3, and on with the angle. I've really been impressed by how little of these pencils I've actually used today. I think this is the first time I've had to sharpen it. Okay, 300, 400, 500, 600, and snap! 639 grams. Very, very low. Onto our green. Let's take that tip off and set our angle up. The weight is on 200, 300, 400, 500, and snap! Even lower than our red at 571 grams. Let's check out that blue. Taking off our tip and setting up our angle, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, and snap! 629 grams. Very, very close to our red pencil. Onto our yellow. Right or wrong, I always think that the yellow is going to be much softer than the rest of the pencils. I guess we'll see. We are set up and the weight is climbing. 300, 400, 500, 600, and snap! 658 grams. Very close to the rest, but just a fraction harder. Onto our black pencil. I've liked the black pencil today, but it's more of a charcoal color than a real black, unfortunately. We're set up and the weight is snap! I didn't even get to say that. 441 grams, a super low break point. And our final pencil, the white. Your guess is as good as mine if it'll be soft or hard. I'm guessing soft. We're set up and 200, 300, 400, snap! 453 grams. Another super soft pencil. Wow, the marketing for these pencils does not lie. When they say soft, they mean very, very soft. If we look at their numbers, our highest breakpoint was strangely and unusually, I think for the first time ever, the yellow coming in at 658 grams, which is in itself super low. But our lowest was actually our black, coming in at 441 grams. I've checked my records and that is actually the softest pencil we've ever had. Very impressive. If we take all of our numbers and average those breakpoints out, we get a score of 565 grams. When we look at our scale here, they end up right at the very bottom as the softest pencils we've ever tested. And it could be a little bit confusing for people just looking at those numbers alone. So let me just be clear. Softness doesn't mean weak. It just means that it takes less pressure to get that pigment on the page. So having a low score isn't a bad thing. It's a characteristic of that pencil that we use and include in our art. Softness aside, I'm actually finding the consistency continues to come through there as well. Our colors were all very close in their breakpoint, and I think that's an excellent achievement for these pencils. It means that as you're using them, they feel really predictable, which just makes them so much easier to use. For our softest pencil yet, but one that's almost the most consistent in this test, I'm giving them a well-deserved A- for the break factor. Slotting them right up here. It's time for our last test, the joy factor. Do these pencils spark joy or do they cause despair? This test is very much my personal opinion, which I've formed across all of these tests. Do the Derwent Coloursoft pencils spark joy? Let's do some arting while we chat about them. With our Coloursoft, as always, I wanted to try and draw something that suits and shows off the pencils as well as I can. Here, I'm aiming for something bright, poppy, and just a little bit of fun with our fairy and her very handsome Prince Charming. We'll see if this ticks all the boxes as we go along. The Coloursoft are overall very comfortable pencils. Derwent's range always feels a little bit fat in my hand, but these lay down so velvety and really so predictably. They are a real joy to work with. I'm still not sold on Derwent Derwent's design choices. I'm not going to keep repeating the same things here, but in using them, the maroon has grown on me, and I do love the addition of the glossy swatch at the end here. Tactilely, it's just a fun pencil to hold. Test-wise, consistency has been the catchword for today. These pencils have done extremely well across the board because of that. They haven't been quite as bright and poppy as I was hoping for with the color range, and I think if we do directly compare them to their main competitor, the Prismacolor, this is where the Prismacolor dominates. 150 colors available compared to the Coloursoft 72 means the Prismacolor will always win here. Price-wise, the Coloursoft retail for 195 AUD for a 72 pack, which is $130 US. That's $2.70 AUD per pencil, which is also a bit more expensive than those Prismacolors, which goes from between $2 to $2.30 AUD per pencil, depending on the kit that you get. But in pretty much everything else, the Coloursoft just edges ahead. They are more consistent, handle better, and are far more economical than the Prismacolor. And unlike the Prismacolor, seem to be made much better and stronger. I haven't had any broken tips or shattered barrels, which is a common complaint from the Prismacolor. Where they are really struggling is in the softness. They are soft, deceptively so. I started this piece thinking like I was drawing with something slightly harder cord, but because these pencils are so soft, I'm finding it really hard to do all the little details I want with them. Mostly because I can't keep a fine point. It's not that they can't do the details, but the amount of effort it's taking for me to constantly sharpen that point to an angle that I'm happy with isn't worth the pain. So I'm gonna break with tradition and do something a little bit different. This piece wasn't a great choice, so let's trash this fairy and start again. Here's something I think will work really well with this kind of soft pencil. It's a little fat rainbow hamster with a cake. Already this artwork is a whole lot easier. The first thing I decided after my first attempt was this pencil would work really well with fur. Because it's so soft with the way that the Coloursoft layers over itself, we've got a natural blending together of the pencil strokes as I put them down, which helps convince us that the hair is more natural. I also think with this one, I've really planned out my colors here to make them pop just a little bit more. And keeping the whole concept a lot simpler hopefully means we don't end up with such a mess trying to add those tiny details like before. Also, finally, before we answer our joy factor question, interestingly, I've noticed something else with this little guy. While the Coloursoft do feel much like the Prismacolor in saturation, blending, and softness, they actually don't seem to smudge as much as the Prismacolor do. It's a small thing, but as I drag my hand across my work, it's not moving as much as it would if I were using the Prismacolor. It's a great little thing that just makes my life so much easier. So, do these pencils spark joy? Yes, yes they do. I am really finding these to be very similar to the Prismacolor, just much easier to handle, and realistically, they are lasting so much longer. The small bump in price for the Coloursoft evens out across the life of the pencils. I do wish they have a slightly better, broader color range, but if you can deal with that, for what they are, they're pretty great. I'm actually considering swapping out my Prismacolor with more of these in the future because they're not as smudgy. But in the meantime, our little hamster, he's done and he looks super cute. I really like the design of our fairy as well, but I think if I try and do her again, I'm going to attempt to do her with a pencil that is slightly harder. Anyway, for a really fun, really consistent pencil, I'm giving the Coloursoft an A in the joy factor. Slotting them right in here. The last thing we're gonna do today is give the Coloursoft a final big score, and of course, categorize them as student, hobbyist, or professional. If you can deal with the cost, these pencils would make excellent coloring pencils. Basically anything in this price range would, so I don't think you'd regret using them for that. But as a professional pencil, there is one thing we don't talk about here that may make you reconsider using them. Light fastness. I can't test light fastness because I don't have the tech and generally don't mention it as it relies purely on the company's own reviews. Derwent has light fast charts of all their pencils, and for the most part, the Coloursoft range is supposedly quite good, but there are a few colors in this range which are terrible. Exactly the same as the Prismacolor range, by the way. So while I am going to class these as professional, because they are mostly great. If you're using them in your art, check those charts to make sure you don't get surprised with fading. On our chart, that slots them right in here. Okay, let's aggregate all the scores that we have today to give ourselves one final big overall score. Drumroll. The Coloursoft received a B+. Well done, Derwent. If we put them on our big scale, they go right up here. That is it. Thank you for coming along with me today as we explored the Derwent Coloursoft. What did you guys think? Do you use them and do you struggle with how soft they are, or is it just me? Everyone has a preference, but I'm curious if anyone else out there will consider dumping the Prismacolor for a little bit of Coloursoft love in your life. If you want your own Coloursoft, I've stuck some links below, and every little click helps just a tiny bit. Next time, which hopefully won't be a month from now, we're checking out apparently one of the best of paint pens, going back to that very black, very popular brand, Posca, with the Posca acrylic markers. Until then, however, if you want more of my face in your face, have a look at the links below. We also have a very active Discord that you can sign up for, and if you want to chat and hang out, come hang out on Twitch. I'm there Mondays, Wednesdays, and Sundays. That's it for now, everyone. Have a brilliant day. I'll talk to you all very soon. Bye.